Okay, we're good to go.
Great. Great. We are live on Zoom and on Facebook, and welcoming everybody who's coming into the stream now from all over the world, I'm sure, in these oh so interesting times we're in. And I wanted to welcome everybody to the Resonance Academy's 6-week overview of the Unified Science Program that has just been made free for everyone to participate in. My name is Marshall Lefferts, and I'm a member of the faculty of the Academy and also a member of the board of directors of Resonance Science Foundation. And we're excited to have the program made available for free for people to participate in. I think we have something around 13,000 people that have signed up since the announcement was made last week to open up the program, and we're just really excited about that, and looking forward to going deep in the exploration with so many new people and all the people that have been in the program for many years. So this series we're doing is a 6-week series that's being offered to provide some introduction to the course, and for Nassim to share about the subjects of each of the 6 modules of the course. And we're going to cover one module of the program that has 6 modules in it over these next 6 weeks. And then after this free series ends, there'll be ongoing monthly live Q&A webinars with Nassim and other faculty, which will be offered by subscription for $5 a month. And we hope many of you will join us for that to help support our operating costs, but more especially to engage in what are really very deep and rich explorations of unified science and its relevance to our world and many topics. We've been doing these for years during the program, and it's just some of the most rich and interesting conversations I know I've ever had. And it really is driven by the questions that the participants bring to us. So it's really fun. And today we're going to be sharing an overview of Module 1 of the program, which is called Worldview Shift. But before I start that, I wanted to just invite Nassim, who's here, to say hello and just kind of touch in, and then we're going to share a little bit about, I want to share with you a little screen share about the module and the website. And then we'll go into a little overview of the module with Nassim. But Nassim, welcome to the webinar out on Facebook and Zoom, and starting off this series.
Thank you. It's good. I'm glad to be here with you. Yeah, like you said, it's very interesting times right now, and moving forward with our mission on this planet to bring, a new understanding of the structure of the universe, our relationship to it, our existence in it, and our relationship to each other, and to all the things that interacts with us, which might be non-local as well. In this effort to have this discussion and to evolve, our community and ourselves and, the world as a whole as a result. I'm really excited that the Unified Science course has been made available like this. I mean, it was my desire for a long time to have this, this open communication with the public. We had some 13,000 people in the course right now. It's very exciting to see, and really as well, wanting to hear back from you. So that's why we put the forum there, and, that's why we've been, wanting to do these discussions every 6 weeks, for 6 weeks every week, and go through the Unified Science course together, so that we can discuss each of the modules and and take questions and learn together and explore. So I'm really happy that we're doing this. And I, you know, in this time where it can be really difficult for people, and we, you know, and they can be like a sense of isolation, a sense of confusion and lost, and so on. I think it's really important that we all connect as well together and talk about these things, and maybe get out of like the media you know, fear that's going on out there, and actually connect to our essence and connect with deeper within to a set of information that is occurring continuously, but that we might not be aware, and we need to be reminded sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important, especially right now.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I feel that the information in this program is some of the key to making the shift in the world. We all do. That's why we're here. That's why you've been doing it for all these years. And this first module is really descriptive of why that is so. And we'll go into that in just a few minutes. Before we do that, though, I want to just share my screen and just show what's on the website and some of the features, and especially for new people that haven't come into the program yet to see what it is, and also for those who have, who are maybe just beginning to explore it, to check it out. So I'm going to find where my share. Oh, this is a different share down here. There
And
it is.
for all the people from France, we're diligently working on transferring the French Unified Science course onto our new platform, and it should be available hopefully by next Thursday. So after this Wednesday call for the English group on next Thursday, we will launch the French Unified Science course. So I'm really excited about that too.
That is great news. Great. Well, here we are, and somehow I've jumped out to the homepage again. So that's cool. This is what happens when you come to the resonantscience.org website, and you can see the registration for the Academy course that we're actually exploring today. Then I'm not going to go through that part. I just wanted to go into the course a little bit and just give a little overview. And here's the link that says My Courses. We'll start there. And this is where we come to our library of courses. For myself, I have a couple here from Robert Grant. There are some of the electives, and there's electives from Robert and Jamie and William. Adam Apollo has one there right now. And so the main thing that we're exploring today, though, is the free Unified Science program, which has the 6 modules. And this is where you come to access those modules. You can see they're here. There's module 1, Worldview Shift. 2 is Thinking Differently, which we'll explore next week. And then in the following weeks, we'll be going into modern physics, unified physics, and then the ancient cultures and the implications and applications of unified physics for the last modules. And when you go into a module, just to give you a little sense of how this is set up here, there's a video that starts playing automatically, which I'll just stop right now. And here is really the basically the table of contents of the module. And it's the same for every first page of the module. You get to see all of what's covered. And you can also navigate into the different sections of each module through this kind of a navigation page here. It is set up so that when you go through the program, it's done in a linear manner, meaning you have to start from the first section and work through it in a given module. But you can jump ahead to later modules without having to go through from the beginning to do the whole program. But we're going to go through this today, but I just wanted to show you, this is the structure where it shows you section 1 is the introduction, and section 2, the 2 worldview lenses. section 3, the disconnected worldview, where we talk about the current paradigm. We're going to do that today, so I won't go into that more right now. And then here is also, we wanted to just highlight today, what Nassim mentioned as well, is the forum. And this is where there's a variety of ways you can engage in this. I think there's a way to, first of all, say hello and make an introduction. There's a category of a forum for that. And really, very importantly, and especially initially as we're going through the program over these weeks, there's a forum for each of the modules. And so if you go into module 1, there are places where people are beginning to ask questions, make comments, and engage in some discussions related to the topic of the worldview shift. So that's a quick little taste of what's in here. There are other aspects that are kind of pretty obvious, I would say, in the store where you can go and access the elective programs and continue into further study as you wish. So with that, I'm going to jump back over to this first page. And Nassim, I think we can start into some discussion about module 1. What we're going to do is just kind of give a little bit of an overview of that for like half an hour and talk about the different sections that are in it. And then there is also in your Zoom, for those who are on Zoom, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen where you can post a question, and ideally related to the unified science and the worldview shift of this module. Preferably not questions about the program, because Nassim and I are not really here today to answer the kind of logistical questions, and they can be sent to the Academy. And if you've signed up and you have questions, please go ahead and send those to them. So this would be more about the actual subject matter of what we're exploring today. And so go ahead and post some questions in there. And when we get through with this little overview, I'll start looking at those. And even while Nassim's talking, I can check out and see what a few starting questions might be. And we'll go for, I think, about 90 minutes total here, and get into what the program is about. And again, this is just the first of a 6 weeks series that we're going to offer for free to get thousands of people oriented into this really wonderful program that we're really excited to be sharing with you all. So I'm going to stop the screen share so we can see Nassim and talk about this. Nassim, I'll also kind of guide us through what these different sections are, so we can at least touch into what they're about and why we feel they're important to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That sounds great.
All right. So
why did we start with worldview?
Yeah, go there.
Well, you helped write that section. You wrote a bunch of it.
I think I pretty much wrote all of it with some of your input. Yeah, so
yeah.
Absolutely. But I wrote that one and the next one, section 2. Yeah.
Right. And so you want to talk about how it felt to write that section a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for me, and I think for the program, the reason we have module 1 as the first module, worldview shift as the first module, is because it's really like the macro view of why this program and why the unified science and the unified physics model is important, because it's addressing a real true paradigm shift in science, and not only in science, but informed by science, a paradigm shift in our understanding of the nature of the world and our relationship to the nature and the universe that is absolutely like a 180-degree shift in from which we'll explore in a little bit more in depth, but from a current paradigm that everything's disconnected and reduction-based scientific approach, which has its ramifications in the world and how we even think and how we even set up our social systems and all the different kinds of systems, and the science that we pursue based on that kind of a paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And the worldview shift is to actually shift from that to one where we realize everything is connected. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a profound shift that will inform everything in our personal lives and in our society the more we actually embrace it. And so that's the
Mm-hmm.
importance of this module.
Right. Well, for me, it was as well, a way to like kind of move in to this mindset. Like when I started writing physics and exploring physics, I mean, I was very young. I was 10, and I was thinking about the physics of the universe. And, there was a distinct, um, there was a distinct, how do you call it? Separation or a distinct, it's funny when you're talking about unification and everything is connected, but there was a distinct division between uh, what was going on inside of me, what was going on, like the mindset I was developing inside of me, and what I was observing in the world all around me. Like a lot of the questions I asked, a lot of the things I was thinking were seemed to be at least in direct opposition or contrary to what I was being told from the outside. So I had a view, a worldview that was different from the worldview of the outside. And I remember feeling this sense of isolation as a result of it, because I felt like, what is going, like, you know, I don't fit in. I don't feel like this world thinks the same way. I was making efforts to try to understand how were they thinking about this. Well, I I was going to Catholic schools, for instance, and they would bring me to church. Our school would go to church every week and go through, all the different levels of evolution in the Christian faith and so on. And I was, going to science class, and I was, trying to understand what they were talking about. And like all this seemed very, very strange. And it almost felt like it was like a movie out there that was playing. And what was playing in my head was completely different. And because when I saw a tree, I could feel the tree. I could see it outside of myself, but I could feel it as well inside of myself. When I was looking at things, when I was looking at objects, I remember, just looking at objects and thinking inanimate objects, not even like living things like trees or animals or plants. But I remember thinking, what does it feel like to be a candle holder? How does it feel inside if you're a candle holder? I was attempting to empathize with the environment, because I felt like there was this collective connection between everything, that there was a connection between the objects in the room and me, since we were all in the same world, all in the same universe. We were all made of the same stuff, and it had, and although it appeared inanimated, it didn't mean that it was, meaning like, I started asking about atoms and electrons and, all this stuff. And clearly these things were happening in them just as much as they were happening in me. And so it was okay. I had more freedom of motion and freedom of movement than the candle holder. But at the end of the day, I was made out of the same stuff. And the stuff in the candle holder was just as dynamic as the stuff in me. So why would I think that the candle holder was not the same thing? So or not part of the same dynamic, like a collective dynamic. And I realized very quickly that the world around me didn't think that way. My schools, my even my parents, my sister, everybody, my friends. I didn't have many because I was kind of isolated, but there was this very large discrepancy between how I felt about the world and how the world felt about the world. And it was a little bit confusing at first. And this is why I thought that we should start with worldview, like describing worldview, like the current paradigm worldview we're in, and then describing what a worldview of understanding the oneness or the unification of things would, like, what would that generate in our society? How would that change who you are independently, and how it would change the world if that were to occur? I mean, the idea that everything is connected and everything is one is not a new idea. And it's been talked about in philosophy for a very long time, in spiritual practice and so on, and we hear it all the time. But to me, so to me, the first step was to, see the difference, see the attributes of these two different approaches, and then move into the consequences of how we got to the worldview that things are not necessarily connected, and how we can change that, and then what would be the consequence of changing that worldview to, from everything is random and disconnected, to everything is connected and functioning together in a coherent manner.
Yeah, that's a great segue into going through what these sections are about in this module.
Right.
Nassim, I had one request from one of our viewers who actually relies quite heavily on lip reading in order to understand what's being said, and whether you might be able to get a little closer to your camera.
Oh, okay.
Pull your camera, your computer closer if possible.
I will try to, maybe I'll change camera angles.
If it might be better. But
yeah, because I can't move the camera that's on my
Oh,
desk.
look at that. Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah, boy. I think that's going to make a big difference.
Okay.
But you have to look at the camera.
Yeah, I'm moving the program over.
Okay, great.
Okay, now I'm.
Yeah, that should really help a lot. I
Okay.
appreciate our viewer asking that. Never had that request before, so
I'm glad.
I'm
I'm
glad
glad we can make it. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
I also wanted to say, I meant to say at the beginning in the intro about this 6 weeks program, is that we're not expecting everybody to go through every module prior to each one of these sessions. That if you want to, you can. They're quite rich. There's a lot to take in. There are many extra resources you can check out, but don't feel like there's some pressure to keep up with these 6 weeks. This is just really an overview intro that we wanted to offer. And you can go at your own pace. I know we all have more time on our hands than we anticipated during this time and maybe even want to have. So maybe you can go through it and do it, which would be great and awesome. But just know that's not the purpose of this.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Especially when we get into module 3 and 4.
So,
but it would be ideal so that
yes,
you can follow with the conversation.
Yeah. So the first, well, after the introduction section, the first section is called Two Worldview Lenses. And this is where we sort of lay out a foundation of what you were just describing about that there are two perspectives that are really informing our worldview, what we believe to be true. And so those are what we call the disconnected worldview of the current scientific paradigm that you were describing. And then the connected worldview of the unified science, the unified physics. Do you want to say anything more about that? You did say some things, but
yeah, I wanted to say that, like, I don't want to confuse. I want to make clear. I don't want to confuse the current scientific paradigm and the scientific method necessarily, or the reductive method of analyzing necessarily, with a disconnected worldview. Okay, I wanted to precisely, to make more precise that it really doesn't, it's not a true, it's not because you're making an analysis by cutting the little pieces of the system to understand them better that that you have automatically a disconnected worldview. Those are not synonymous. The scientific method has its value. It does an excellent job at doing an analysis of a system. The only issue that comes up is that the scientific method taken outside of a unified view starts to break down, right? So what I mean by that, let's say you take, a Carnot engine or hydroelectric dam, right? Either one, any energy system, for instance, and you start the analysis by saying, I'm going to artificially isolate this system from the whole, meaning, and our laws of physics, our laws of motions, our laws of energy conservation start with this statement: within an isolated system. And the rest is correct, all based on that first statement: within an isolated system. So it's not like it's wrong. And Marshall, is the camera back on me, or because I'm seeing you?
Oh, I'm seeing you, and I believe
Okay,
it's on speaker view, so it's dynamically changing, but you're probably just seeing me.
Okay. So
Jamie, tell us if we're wrong, or Penny, tell us if that's not correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all good, Jamie?
Yeah, you guys are good.
Okay. All right. So basically, when it is isolated this way, we end up with the wrong, inaccurate understanding of conservation law. So for instance, we have water that's in a dam, right? And so the water, you could think of the top of the dam as a lake, right? So we've dammed the river and we've made a lake. And so this water is thought in physics to have a gravitational potential, right? It has a potential energy to fall the distance from the lake down through the dam and down to the river below. And the analysis is done in terms of the water goes down the dam, turns the turbine, and comes out the bottom. And the energy we extract from the turbine is a percentage of the energy potential that was in the water when it was in the lake. You're following me there?
Mhm.
Okay. And that's great. And so we say that depending on the efficiency of the turbine, we say that we have, a coefficient of efficiency that's in the 70 some percentile or 50 some percentile, whatever it is, of the energy potential, recuperated in the turbine and transferred to electrical power, which we use to run our houses and our society. So where did we put the box, right? Where, like, we did the analysis, we got all the numbers, and physics can tell you, how efficient the turbines are depending on their thermodynamic expansion coefficient and all, like how much heat is being lost, how much energy is being lost in heat in the turbine and all this stuff. And so you can actually analyze each piece very, very well inside the box, and it's going to be very accurate and very useful for the engineers to build the dam, for you to be able to know how thick the dam has to be in order to, retain all the pressure of the water up there, how much pressure is going to come through the dam and through the turbine and all this stuff. Really important stuff. But if you're actually trying to understand the physics, and I'm going to replace that but, I'm going to say and, if you're trying to understand the physics of the universe, now you got to break the box. If you forget that you've placed a box, if you forget that you've isolated the system, that's when the paradigm of separateness gets you in trouble. So now you break the box and you go, oh wow, the water, the energy potential, the energy I got from the turbine is the result of the energy potential of this water that went through and that went down the river. And as it went down the river, the earth was spinning and the sun was shining, and it made the water evaporate. And because of Coriolis effects in our stratosphere and in our environment, the clouds that were created by the evaporation of water came back up north, right, and ended up raining into that lake and giving me the energy potential back, right? I mean, that's how a hydroelectric dam works, right? If the water doesn't continue flowing into that dam, it stops, right? Hopefully the cycle is continuous. So then then the energy you got out didn't just come from the energy potential of the water falling through the gravitational field. It came from the earth spinning. It came from the fact that there's already a gravitational field there. Where did that energy come from? It came from the sun shining. And how did the sun get to shine? So now you got to go back. You say, well, the sun came out of the galaxy. Well, how did it come out of the galaxy? Now you got to say, well, why, how did the energy of the galaxy get there? How did the sun emerge from an energetic system that we call a galaxy? How did that get there? And then you go back and you at one point, you're gonna have to go, oh, there is energy, right? There's a plenum of energy. There's a source of energy that I don't understand, that I don't know is there, that I have not been able to identify, right? So that would tell you right away, I should look for this energy. I should, because it's all connected. So if energy can only be conserved, that is, it's always being utilized, it's just changing phase, then where is this fundamental energy, right? So now your society would develop in a completely different way.
Yeah. So that's a fantastic presentation of what the difference is between what we call a disconnected worldview, where we actually try to isolate systems and then take that as the model of even the nature of the universe itself.
Right.
And shifting that to one where you say, well, let's remove the box because that's an arbitrary boundary that is actually now impeding us from really understanding to the true nature of the universe, and not only that, to actually get correct physics. And so the next section, the next is actually about the disconnected worldview. You did a great description of that. And the next one is about shifting our worldview and the importance of doing so, and how it's a natural evolution in society. And you even described, there's one section in here about the feedback is inherent in cosmic evolution, as we call it here. And so why don't you share a little bit about what that shift is about and how important it is to shift our worldview and beyond just the science itself.
Yeah. So it's not, like I was saying, it's not like the scientific method is invalid. It's just that you have to keep it in the context of the whole. You can't lose sight of the whole. You can never lose sight of the whole. And when you do, things change. When you do, all of a sudden, I mean, for me, it's a normal thing because it's been in my head that way for a long time. But I know that, like, when I'm in difficult situation, like arguing with people or whatever, I can get in that place where I feel the separation, right? And I know that it's a very fundamental change in your brain, that happens when you see the individualization and you keep it in the context of the whole. Meaning, you know that it's not just this thing independently, but it's this thing in relationship to everything else. And it's like thinking outside the box constantly. It's like removing the box. So so that you can see that, like, yes, this is an individualization of this energy, this fundamental, source of reality. It's made out of trillions and trillions of atoms. They're all very dynamic. This thing only appears still relative to me. Relative to, for instance, an observer looking at it from space, it's not still because it's spinning on a planet, right? So it's actually moving pretty fast, okay? But relative to me, it's still because I'm spinning with it, right? So even simple things like that, to keep that larger perspective of wholeness constantly in your thoughts, to never, or as best as you can, to not let the apparent separation, to not let the apparent individualization, cloud your view of the whole, the relationship, right? Not only is it appearing still to me, and if I change the scale looking from space, it would look like it's moving. But even if I change the scale from here to the scale of the atoms in there, it would be moving, right? I would see the electrons whizzing and the protons going. And I mean, the whole thing is going at the speed of light, right? So it's like, it's, you know, the apparent stillness is an apparent, you know, is an appearance that is an illusion based on only the interpretation or the analysis of one frame of reference, right? I've isolated me and this pencil in this box, and I'm saying it's not moving, right? It's true inside that box, but only inside that box, right? So
the box is a frame of reference,
right?
and a frame of reference is okay to have. As a matter of fact, that's what makes it possible to even be here and function. And so again, it's not that there's something inappropriate in a scientific model that includes that, because it actually has been very beneficial. What we're talking about though here is removing the idea of the box so we can see the whole. And I remember Buckminster Fuller always said, you know, when he was beginning problem solving, he said, start from the universe and then remove the irrelevancies to your question, your inquiry, you know, but always start from universe.
Yeah.
I love that. That's it right there.
Well, you know, Einstein relativity thoughts was you know, a really good step in starting to touch on this, right? Showing that the perspective that you have on an object or on a physical dynamic is very much relative to your relationship to it, right? So that, you know, something that appears a certain way, if you change your relationship to it, could appear completely different. Meaning, you know, all of a sudden, if my relationship to this pen is that I'm moving at the speed of light relative to it, that pen would look vastly different, right? It was not gonna be anything like it looks like right now, where I'm relative to it at the same speed, right? So it really is, it was really a first step in starting to think in a wholeness way. Relativity was starting to say, wait a minute, you can't just think of energy like mass and these things like special relativity and then general relativity. You can't just think as these things like isolated. They are in the context of the observer, and they are in the context of their relationship to each other. For instance, you know, and from those thoughts was realized that, wow, you know, if a mass is moving near the speed of light, it changes, right? If time is moving at, you know, relative to a frame of reference, if something is moving near the speed of light, then time for that observer changes, right? The time that it sees that particle falling into a black hole, right, goes to infinity, right? The time gets stretched. So this, you know, this, all of a sudden, there's this sense. And so it was this first sense that things are relative to each other. They're not necessarily, you know, complete, cemented in their behavior, you know, no matter what the observer is doing.
And across the whole universe.
Correct.
Yeah, inclusive of the whole universe.
Inclusive of the whole universe, right?
Yeah, and that is I would say you're right. That's one of the more significant or important beginnings of that worldview shift that informed much of it. And we're at a threshold of a much more profound, I would say, fundamental shift. One of the sections in this, or one of the topics in the section we're talking about right now, the shifting our worldview, you touched on it, but I think it's a good one just to say more about, is feedback is inherent in cosmic evolution. And so if you could just talk about that, but in the context of why that's important for our worldview to understand that. Like, we're really talking about understanding the nature of things, and they're really, next we'll talk about the implications of this, but that aspect of what unified physics and unified science shows us about feedback being inherent in the natural evolutionary systems here.
Right.
How does that really inform our worldview?
Well, because when you realize, like my little allegory about a hydroelectric dam, when you break the box and you realize that the water is going down and then it goes up and then it goes back, right? So you could think of the feed forward was the water falling through the dam, and then the feed back is the water coming back into the lake, right? When it comes back into the lake, like when you break the box and you get a unified worldview, and you don't even make the box at the universe, so you have multiverses and all this, you realize that systems are in continuous, like the energy is continuously on the feedback, right? You realize, wait, when the water went down the river, for instance, it picked up, particles from like the rocks, and it picked up particles from the fish, and it picked up, it like all the plants in the river and all this stuff, and the algae and all this. And then when it evaporated, it picked up carbon particles from, the pollution, not far from, and so on, or whatever in the atmosphere. And then it comes back into the lake. It's changed. There's been an exchange. It has interacted with the world, right? It's transformed, right? You can't assume it's all the same particles of water, right? Because you're not closing the box. So there's other lakes, and there's other rivers, and there's other dams, and so it's the water that's coming back has been to many places, and it's carrying different sets of information. You can think of it that way. And so when it comes back, it's changed. And I could get technical here, and get into
Go for more of the worldview part, because we'll get technical as we go in the later modules, because we're going to go into unified physics. I'm sure we'll talk about that technically more there. But in terms of
just as a parenthesis, Cartan Einstein, torsion theories showed that the vectors going around the geodesic come back change. But basically, all of a sudden you start to realize the whole thing is learning.
That's key.
The whole thing is changing. It's constantly evolving. And now you have a basis to understand your world as this connected mechanism learning about itself through feedback structures in the universe. It's now, the wholeness is not just the wholeness like a steel wholeness, right? Like nobody moves, nobody gets hurt, right? Safety meeting, right? Like, what do you mean? Okay, it's not like everything is connected in some kind of static way, right? But it's that the connections are constantly moving, right? The connections are constantly connecting, disconnecting, connect. You can never disconnect completely, because any connection you make has connections to the other things. You can always come back. There's always feedback, right? But there's a constant change in the relationships. There's a constant change in the dynamic. The system is learning and in a dynamical way, and you're part of it.
Mm.
And that changes your worldview dramatically, not just your worldview outside of you, but your worldview about you,
Yeah.
right? Which is part of changing the worldviews. It's getting that I'm part of what I'm observing. I'm participating. I'm not like a frame of reference, somehow separated from the rest of the universe and looking at it, but I'm actually part of the feedback, system.
And informing it.
And informing it.
And learning and growing, evolving it,
Evolving.
actively participating in that.
Yeah.
And what's so important in that part of this worldview shift is how necessary that is for a system to function in a healthy manner. We can see in our world where we don't have some of that feedback loop in our systems. They kind of just go one way, like our media, for example. It's just blah, 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 one way.
Mhm.
Where here in the internet, we can actually have the feedback loop experience where we're engaging in discussions and
Right.
this huge difference
Hopefully.
in that.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Hopefully there's some listening as much
Yes.
as
At least there's the opportunity for it, where in the other there isn't. And that's the key of that aspect of this worldview shift and how important it is.
Right.
So talk a little bit and then we'll shift over to some questions.
Yeah.
But in the last section is about the implications of a connected worldview in our world. Why don't you just touch on that for just a few minutes?
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly the implications is, first of all, a sense of belonging that emerge. It's very deep. It's a sense of, oh, I get it. I'm not alone in this thing. I'm not like isolated, like alone in my, all the stories, like all the little voices in your head and all this. Like, this is not just like, it's not isolated from the rest. I'm part of this thing, and it's profound, right? Because now all of a sudden, like, I'm in my kitchen. I'm part of my salt shaker, right? I'm part of my magnifier glass, right? When I'm looking down the rabbit hole on my I'm actually looking at the same thing that makes me, right? I'm part of this whole thing. So it has deep implication, and it will give you direction. And what I mean by that, and I'm just addressing the philosophical part. We'll address more of the technological part in a minute, but meaning that I'm part of this, and this is part of me. It's not just one way, meaning it's influencing me and I'm influencing it. But as well, my awareness, my point of view is an important part of the dynamic of the whole, meaning that like nobody on this call, we have like 1,600 people on the Zoom call. I don't know how many on Facebook, but everybody that's looking at this thing, right? Well, because you're all looking through this camera, you'll still see different things, but you all have different colors. You'll tend to see the same thing on that other side of the camera. But all of us, if we all were in the same room, would see a little bit different angle of this thing. And even though you're looking through a camera, so you have the same angle as everybody else on the call, you all see different colors, we know that, you know, not everybody sees the same colors, and you're going to see details that others don't see, and so on. So we are all interpreting the field in a different way, right? And so we are all transforming our world as a result of our interpretation. And that interpretation is feeding back information so that you can see, you can imagine that there is no possible like removal of your frame of reference. There's, you know, but then as well, you can imagine that every atom or every cells you're made of are observing the universe from its own perspective. Every atom that you're made of is observing the universe from its own perspective. It's all different frame of reference. And now you can see that, oh, okay, so that means my relationship to the universe is actually an agglomeration of frames of reference that goes very, very small. So, and like you could go all the way down to the Planck length, where you have 100 trillion atoms in every cell. There's, according to our calculations for the holographic mass solution, there's a 10 to the 60th Plancks in one proton. You know, there's trillions and trillions and trillions of frame of reference that make you, right? And then we're finding the sub-Planck now and all this. And so that you're a mechanism of creation right here, right? Like you're a mechanism of creation right here. And so what I mean by it gives you direction is like, if you want to know about the universe, and this is what our equations done, like by looking at a proton, we learned about the universe, right? If you want to know about the universe, if you want to know about the world, about the true worldview behind the veil, behind the apparent separation, if you want to know what it looks like, which direction should you go? Outside or inside, right? To the big or to the small? Well, if you go to the big, you can get some data. Yeah, the salt shaker looks like this. Yeah, the star looks like that. Yeah, the galaxy. You can get a little bit of information, but you're fairly limited because your senses are limited to a fairly short region that you can analyze. But if you go inwards, inside yourself, then you have access to the information. And it's the same thing in technology. So this type of view, so this is a good thing. Now you know which direction to go to learn about the universe. And you can confirm it from outside observation after, and you might find you're correct. Or you might find you need to tweak it a little bit. You didn't get it quite right. And that's good too. But at least you have both the feed forward and the feedback, right? The feedback is what's outside you. The feed forward is what's inside you. And so now you know the direction. But then as well, you can, so based on this, as you develop this, you then realize, oh, okay, so that means that object over there that I call a magnetic motor, if I can get it in the right configuration so that the stuff that it's made of, the atoms that it's made of, right, are able to collaborate, harmonize, resonate in the right configuration, then I can get the thing to feed back on itself and it will go on its own, right? And it will produce power, right? And guess what? And if I can get this plasma thing to spin fast enough and feed back on itself just the right way and all this stuff, then it will produce curvature in space-time. It will produce such an energy event and I'll get control over gravity. And so all of a sudden your world completely changed because you realize that there's an energy at the source of creation that you didn't know was there, because you were only analyzing the result, not knowing the source of it. And that's what we've done. Science, specifically physics, has analyzed the result. Like we know about the electromagnetic field, we know about gravity, we know about the strong force, the weak force, but we know about charge, we know about these things, but we don't know what the source of them are. The closest we got was Einstein with general relativity and space-time, saying that gravity is the result of space-time curving, but then he didn't explain what space-time is made of, right? What is that space-time? Why is it that when that thing we call space-time curves, we get gravitational field? Well, what we're discovering is that space and time, which I like to think of as memory, space memory, is actually this information field at the Planck scale that's full of energy that is producing all these effects.
Mm. Right on. And that's what the implications are of this theory in the worldview shift.
So yeah, it goes far. That's why it's an
very, very
important
far. It's fundamental. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
truly right down to the most ground state of how we understand reality and our relationship to the whole of it. And that's really, really important.
And how we do physics, how we
And
analyze.
then we do physics and across all the sciences, because
Right.
every one of them, when you have a unified model, informs all the others.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're doing biology, for instance, and I think we had William Brown on for a minute.
Mhm.
And if you're doing biology, for instance, and you only analyze cells,
Mhm.
then you miss the part that cells are made out of atoms.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And there's a lot of information in there. So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
And so they must, there's a source to this. Oh, there's William.
Shall we
Hi.
shift to some questions? We don't want to get too technically into it today.
Okay. Okay.
And we'll have William go into some of that in a later much. Thanks, William. We're going to do maybe.
If you want to pick some questions, you can do that too.
Yeah. If you want to pick some questions, that's good too. And we'll go for like a half hour more here.
Oh, I took so much time.
It's okay. It's all good. It's all
We can go a little longer if you
very
want.
informative.
Sorry, you guys. I want to answer your questions. I just got excited.
Well, there's so many questions. It's impossible to get to all these questions, and I'm just going to try to pick some that are more in the worldview. Yeah. So here's one from Mark Rosbach that says, from the time the course was created until now, how much do you think the worldview has changed in a global and academic level?
Yeah, dramatically. And I was going to mention that on this call, and I was going to actually put a disclaimer when we put the course out, last week, that the course is 7 years old, and we are, actively working at updating it. Actually, sections of module 6 are going to be updated in the next few weeks. Olivier and all the research science team, we're gonna try to update section 4 or module 4, hopefully soon. Even the worldview part probably needs just a little tweaking to make it more current. But yes, that's a good point. The worldview change has severely shifted in the last 7 years since the course was written, and has shifted towards a unified view, a whole view, which is, I'm happy to report. If it would have shifted the other way, we would be in deep trouble. But but you know, even this event that's occurring on our planet right now, which is horrifying, you know, this like, I mean, it, I don't know. I'm sure that a lot of you feel that way as well. I mean, there's a part of it which is the suffering that's occurring is so difficult to watch and so difficult to see, and I feel so much empathy for all the people affected and the you know the families that are losing loved ones and so on. I mean, for all you know the health care workers, like in this really difficult position of having to care for patients, which you know they do because of feeling of love for humans, and you know that most of them are involved in that profession because they love to bring people to health and make them healthy and take care of them and reconfort them and all this, having to balance that with like I gotta you know protect myself and not catch this thing myself and all this, and so you know and working night and day and all this. So you know there's that, and at the same time there is this feeling that is like, wow, the world is opening up, the world, the lotus is opening up, that the you know the minds of people are opening up because they have got to stop, right? So they had no choice. Now they had to stop, right? They had to stop all the outside activities, right? All the things that kept them busy and all this stuff, all the distractions. You know, you don't even get to ride in your nice new car. You don't even get to, you know, you don't even get to go and buy yourself some treats at the store or order food out, or you know. So everybody had to stop, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what's important? What is really important, right? And the time and the time that they get to like feel their feelings, feel their sensation, like feel their existence, right? And then you know at the same time, so then this opportunity emerged, this opportunity that when that this, and you know it's so similar. I don't know about you, but in my life, you know, typically my greatest lessons came from my greatest moments of difficulties. And so it's like, here is an opportunity. And it's such a good lessons for our lives as well. Every moment of difficulty we have in our life is an opportunity, you know, to grow, to transform, to evolve. Um, Again, it's the system learning about itself, right? Your immune system right now is learning about this new virus, and it will learn very fast, and it will make the antibodies, and it will be just fine, right? Just as long as you take care of it, right? And so it's really kind of like uh, this change that has been happening since 7 years since we write the course is enormous. Like so many scientists are talking about the concept of unity now, the concept of oneness and all this. Like they don't talk about it that way, but the math and the physics are starting to like show this to more and more scientists. They're starting to get it. Wow, it appears like the whole thing is entangled. Oh, wow, you know, like that, like stars, although they might be far away from each other, are communicated and connecting, and you know, like that systems are integral. Parts of systems are integral to each other, and so on. So everything has changed quite a bit since then.
Great to hear you say that. I was curious what you felt about that. I mean, I certainly see that as well, but you're deep into the really the science and the scientists, the research and the academia. I think academia is probably going to be one of the last holdouts because they're very entrenched in a particular view, and a lot of textbooks that are stuck in that, and so that's going to be a little bit longer.
That's another distinction that it's important to make. There's the institutions, and then there is the scientist.
Yeah.
And the scientist,
you see it in the science.
Yes.
Well, that's really better in a way initially.
Because eventually it will change the institution, but that comes later. Like you said, it's going to hold out.
Yeah. There was a question too related, curious to hear what you had to say, from Ann Whitcomb asking, are there any present world leaders who are sympathetic with this worldview shift that you're aware of?
Absolutely. I met one this year. The Dalai Lama is very, very on track with this world shift. For him, it's not a shift. It's been there all the time.
Right.
However, it was great. We had a 4.5-hour meeting, and it was great to bring to his worldview, like the possibility that, that there is physics that actually describes this. Like, for instance, one of the first thing I showed him is the evidence that space is not empty, that it's made of, grains of oscillating electromagnetic fields, that we call Planck oscillators. And as soon as I said that, he looked at me, he goes, oh yeah, we have this in Buddhist tradition. I'm like, oh, and he goes, yeah, it's called space particles. I'm like, you guys have a thing called space particles? He goes, yeah, we do. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, and we think it makes up everything. I'm like, well, that's what I found too. Here's the equation. And so, it's really kind of nice to see. And then the discussion went a little farther, and he said, but as well in our tradition, we have another particle that's even more subtle. And I took more subtle to mean, in my terms, in physics, would be smaller, right? And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah. And I said, oh, look on my chart here, because I had finished the equation, the scaling equation for the holographic mass that I showed him. That's not published yet, but we found the sub-Planck, and the distance between the sub-Planck and the Planck is the same distance from the Planck to the universe. So it's like really subtle, right? It's really down there. And I said, you see, we have it on our chart. There's something more subtle than the space particles. And he goes, yeah, we call them consciousness particles.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I totally get that. That's the speed of thoughts, right? That's the, I got the chills. I think he got the chills, but I don't know if he did. But it was a great moment, I felt. And and it was great. We had other scientists there. We had Robert Grant. We had a bunch of, we had a great discussion. He was so amazing to be with him.
Wow.
Is there other world leaders? I believe so. There might not be vocal, I think, and it depends at which level of leadership you're asking, but I think that in general, it's permutating everywhere. It's like the virus, right? Nobody is immune. Well, some people are immune if they have the antibodies, but I mean, leaders of government.
Everybody is touched by it.
Everybody's touched by it, right? Like the currently, let's send him healing energy. The Prime Minister of England is in ICU currently, so nobody is immune to this change that's occurring, this upswelling that's occurring. And it's like, will this upswell occur fast enough so that we can overcome some of the structures that we've put in place that brought on this great lesson we're learning today, right? Because whenever you have a great lesson in your life personally is typically because you brought it on, right? You did things that brought that about, right?
Feedback loop.
Feedback came back. So, this virus that's going around the world, well, look at the way we've been treating the world. Look at the way we've been treating each other. Look at the way we've been treating our bodies. If you treat your body in certain ways that's not very harmonious with your body, then it's not going to be able to resist, assault from viruses and so on. So, it's I think there's definitely a change. I can even see it in people like Donald Trump, and everybody is changing so fast now.
Yeah, and we are certainly faced with it's really a fundamental choice point, I think, that we're in.
Yeah, and we're all growing, we're all.
And then this to have a scientific premise that is not only just acknowledging of the shift of understanding and perspective and worldview, it also provides the solutions to the solutions to the unsolved problems in physics and other sciences, but also the solutions to technologically and as well as socially and interpersonally, because it does give us a completely different, a very largely different shift of how we perceive ourselves, each other, nature, the world, when we realize it is absolutely continuously connected, feeding back in and of itself. We see these consequences and we have the choice to go forward in a way that may ideally be beneficial by bringing in the more harmonious understanding, relationship, and technological development that is actually harmonizing with, so these are some of the implications of what fundamentally is a worldview shift. That's where it really begins.
Right. When you do, I was thinking about that the other day, because I always have a tendency to think whole. I was thinking about, the feedback, right? I was thinking that the first part that I thought of was, wow, in 9 months, they're going to be a huge baby boom, right? Because we're all, people at home, right? And so there's going to be a huge baby boom. There's no doubt. But then, there's been many souls that were lost. And so they're getting bodies to, come back in, if you think of it this way in the Buddhist perspective, So, so it's like a recycling, in some ways. And it doesn't undermine, the difficulty that people are experiencing. But
one of the questions there's so many questions here, and I tried tagging some that were kind of in this topic, but it's hard to find them now. But one of the questions had to do with, the statement that the shift of this world view and the science underlying it will be beneficial. And we're in a world where there's a lot of challenge and control and the kinds of systems that are in place that are causing what we believe to be problems and conflicts. And so, how would you say that this knowledge, the science and the understanding and the relevance to our consciousness and our perception of the world basically kind of assures a beneficial outcome, or at least indicates a beneficial outcome, rather than being somehow used for what we might call a not so beneficial outcome?
Right. It's a difficult question, and it really, you know, this kind of different level of looking at this question, right? There's the whole view, right? The worldview of wholeness, in which you can, in which the terminology evil, difficult, like doesn't hold the same meaning. And why doesn't it? Well, because in the whole view, in the wholeness of the worldview, you look at difficulties and you go, these are opportunities. So how, you know, so a difficulty is an opportunity, right? So because why is it like that in the view of a whole view? Is because the whole view, again, doesn't just look at in the box what's happening. It's looking at the result, like over time, right? Like, you know, the impact of something that in the box individually looks bad, right? Over time is a learning opportunity of a system to grow to a higher level of complexity, higher level of awareness, right? So then all of a sudden, you know, the idea of evil kind of transformed to the concept of confusion, levels of confusion, like shades of gray, right? It's not like you have white and black, you just got different shades, you know, of awareness, of understanding, of coherency and decoherency. But the decoherency is always result in a higher level of reorganization into a more coherent thing, right? So viewed from that perspective, it will succeed. You can't, it will. The question is how fast, right? It will succeed in reorganizing humans in a coherent, you know, more harmonious, better world, right? How long is it going to take? And will this world need to be destroyed and re-emerge in another world somewhere in the universe, right? Because no energy can be lost, right? And continue its evolution there, you know, and maybe take a few steps back before they move forward again, you know, that is all up to us, right? That is all up to us. Like that is up to every single individual on the planet because they're all participating in it, right? So how do we assure that it's gonna produce a positive result? We can only do our part, right? Like each one does its part, we're good.
Yeah.
Each one
In
does
integrity.
Yeah, in full integrity. You see, in a more evolved world, right? In a more evolved world, for instance, you don't have laws, right? Because they're obvious. Like integrity is not something that you have to work for, right? Love is not something you have to work for. You know, empathy for the other is not something that is inherent to the system, to the universe, right? You know instinctively, right? And I use the word instinctively loosely here. You know instinctively because the universe is part of that, of you, and it knows, right? When you do something better than something not as good, right? Like, you know, when you are doing something that you shouldn't be doing, right? Like, it's clear. It's not difficult to, and if everybody does that, then why would you need a law, right? People would know not to do things that harm others, not, you know, I mean, a good experiment was initially for that was Burning Man, right? You know,
Mhm.
at the time, 40,000 people would come together, and generally, I at the time I went to a few Burning Mans, and I never saw a fight. I never saw, you know, people like in general, people were compatible, you know, naturally humans are loving, caring, empathic, you know, beings that just want to be joyful and that want to take care of themselves and their family and make sure that everybody's okay. Look how much heartfelt feelings there is out there, you know, from all of the world, for all of the people that are sick and for the caretakers and for the doctors and all this. There's so much love, right? There's so, because that's the natural state of beings.
Yeah.
When beings are not, you know, when beings are not in that state is because they have suffered, right? They've suffered hurt and damage, and it's made them you know, angry, frustrated, you know, whatever, like, you know, lose their empathy, right? But no baby is born that way,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
It might be carrying some disinformation over lives, but let's clean that out of our evolution. Let's love our children the right way. Let's love each other the right way. Let's go with the universe, which
Yeah.
is creative and harmonious and in resonance with each other.
Yeah. Again, Buckminster Fuller, who was a great inspiration for both you and me, Nassim.
Yeah.
You know, he especially towards the end of his life, he actually held what he called integrity days, and he always just said, only integrity counts.
Right.
That's the only thing that counts, because once you actually make integrity your operating principle for life, for every thought you have, for your communication, for your interaction, for the service you bring into the world, and how you show up, your behavior, you know, boy, that's a simple statement, only integrity counts. But when you really start applying that, you can see how, yes, that will be the kind of the key that can make the turn in the world. You know, there's not, it's not deception, it's not corruption, you know, all these other things that we know are operating very blatantly these days in the world.
Right.
You know, that's not integrity. We can see, okay, there's a contrast there.
Right.
And I think from the question about, you know, how will this worldview shift somewhat assure a beneficial outcome is, in large part, it's recognizing, like you just said, the integrity of the universe itself.
Right.
Which is also what Buckminster Fuller said. You know, the universe is already operating in integrity. Nature operates in integrity. We humans have this wonderful gift of being able to choose how we're going to think and behave and interact that can be a little wobbly. You know?
Yes.
And that's actually a very beautiful thing. But we do have to, you know, be conscious of how we are being, and we have the opportunity to choose to be in integrity. And the worldview of understanding the unification of all things makes us realize that, wow, that's very important. Actually, that's not just a nice idea.
Right.
And that when we do engage it, it will actually be beneficial, because we're actually coming into integrity and harmony with nature and the cosmos.
Yeah, and it's very subtle, you know. It's not, and it's not just big things like don't go and rob the corner store. You know, it's very subtle. It's like, am I truly expressing who I am? Am I in integrity in how I portray myself in the world, right? Like, am I in integrity in, you know, like my actions? Or is there conflict of integrity between my actions and my internal feelings, right? Am I doing, you know, am I acting in contradictory way to what I actually feel is the correct or the integrate way of not having conflicting behaviors, right? Like where your behavior is not commensurate to, like where you, and we're all struggling with that. Like we all, you have to be patient with yourself because we all screw up continuously, right? But the more aware and attention we place on it, better we can okay, how can I tune this? Like I can edit better, like what is going through my head? How am I thinking of a certain thing? Like, how do I find this balance, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah.
Do we have time for another or?
Well, we could do one more,
Okay.
and I think wrap after that. I don't know if you've seen any that I find in terms of kind of understanding from this, having a conversation from the worldview perspective. The very first question is kind of interesting, from Giulia Roggia from Italy. Julia from Italy. It says, you know what, maybe we just answered that one. But it says, how can we create a built-in virtuous process to make sure that the unified worldview doesn't become a dogma in spite of our best intentions?
Well, I think that it's the main thing to stop dogma is to always refer back to the natural world, right? Meaning, like, what is the feedback we're getting? What is dogma can only live in a conceptual notion that is dissociated from the natural world, right? Meaning that certain sets of rules are established, and no matter what, even if the natural world is clearly tell you the contrary, right? You will hold to those sets of rules, right? And there's definitely dogma in religions, but there's a certain amount of dogma in institutions and in structures in our world and all this. Now, but if we attach our worldview, right, to the natural world, to the feedback that we're getting from the natural world, right, then we can start to see, okay, it cannot become a dogma because we're going to have to upgrade, right? We're going to have to continue to evolve our worldview as the natural world evolves, right? As it evolves and as we evolve our capacity to understand the natural world, then our worldview will continue to evolve, right?
Yeah, that's a great answer, Nassim. Yeah, that feels very true to me, very appropriate to coming, having a understanding of our own position in the universe as not the dogmatic knowing it all, but as a participant in a knowing that is constantly evolving and that's integrated with the natural world. And that if we keep aligning and getting our foundation into that relationship and understanding, we won't get stuck on, oh, this is it, and we're stopping there. There's a great phrase that physicist David Bohm had called the qualitative infinity of nature. The qualitative infinity of nature, recognizing exactly this, that, doesn't matter, something is always going to become obsolete. Whatever thought we have, there's going to be another quality that comes in that will make that one not a dogma, not a truth, not an absolute, but a relative understanding.
Right.
I think that's key.
Yeah, that's key. And if there wasn't this, then the universe would end. If there was never anything else for the universe to grow into and understand and evolve and so on, then it would be done, right? The feedback would stop, and
which happens in nature. Whenever the feedback loop stops, the ecosystem collapses, the organism dies. We call it dying. That process terminates.
Yeah. And so then it has to be recycled into a larger process, and so this feedback principle has to be present even in our personal life. When you're getting feedback from the environment, right, even if it's incorrect, right, there's always nuggets in there that you can extract, and learn from. It might not be apparent right from the beginning, but you have to know that your own dogma about who you are, can be a problem, right? Don't be afraid to continue to break yourself down and rebuild yourself, and break yourself down and rebuild yourself, at certain levels, right?
Yeah.
Even in feedback that is completely inaccurate, right? From other people or so on. Like, there's always things that you can extract, even if it's a different way of interacting that would not produce that, or all
Right.
this stuff, right? So having that capacity, people call that humility, but humility doesn't come from there's confusion about humility. It doesn't come from thinking of yourself as less than. That's not humility, right?
Right.
For instance, people say, oh, well, you can't know it all. And they think of it as being an appropriate humility statement, right? But actually it's an arrogant statement, because it's saying to someone else that they can't know it all. And guess what? They just said they can't know it all. So they can't say that they know that nobody else can know it all, right? So you see,
There's logic to that, yes.
right. So actually, no, you can know it all because you're part of the whole. You're part of the whole, and so humility is not thinking of yourself as less. Like when the Buddha was asked, Buddha, you say everything's the Buddha, but if everything is the Buddha, why aren't we like you? And he goes, well, the only difference is that the Buddha knows it's the Buddha, right? So basically, if you don't think of yourself as the universe, as the master, then there's no way you're going to be the master, right? It's not possible. So, but the master doesn't have an ego problem. He doesn't have a humility problem, right? Why does he not? Well, because he knows that everybody is the master. Everybody has that potential, right? So of course, it's not coming from ego. He can safely feel good about saying I'm the master, right?
Yeah.
Because or she or
Yes.
So it's okay, yeah, you are, and so is everybody else. Don't forget that part, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Beautiful. Well, it's like the old ancient adage, your karma is going to run over your dogma, and that'll be end of your dogma. So
yeah, that was the worldview section, and that's why we wrote it, because it's really for entering into this highway we're putting you on in this course, right? It's like the entry into, like, it's like your first, like getting the car on the highway. You're like, okay, I got to think big, I got to think holistic, right? And from there I can come in and I'm going to learn how through history we got where we are with the thinking we got, in the context of evolution as a whole. And then how do we change what we have so that it's reflecting this wholeness of our thinking, of our
Beautiful.
experience.
Great summation. Exactly. That's what module 1 is really offering in terms of the ramp into this goes much deeper into how this worldview is informed by the unified science. And so, yeah, we'll enjoy it. Those who are actively in it and or going down the road, enjoy it. And next week we're going to meet again at this same time, Wednesday at 12 noon for the next 5 weeks coming. Next week is module 2, talking about thinking differently, and that's part of the process of making the worldview shift. And what does that even mean, and how is it informed by the science we're exploring? So that's going to be fun.
How did it occur in history?
And how does it occur in history, and how does that change worldviews as it does occur, and all that. Yep.
Right.
Great. So I think we'll leave it at that for today. I think there's 200 more questions to go. So I think we'll
I'm so grateful. I want to say I'm so grateful to all of you to participate in our course. And, I'm so grateful for all the questions. I'm so sorry I talk so much. I just get excited about all kinds of things. And, and I don't answer as many questions as I could. I'll try to get my answers to be shorter at one point. I'm so grateful in your participation. I'm so grateful in your participation in the forum, and I'm gonna attempt in my crazy busy schedule to get in there and talk with you guys, because I love the discussions that are going on in there, and I'd love to participate as well. And I'm grateful for all of you to be there on this journey with us. Like I'm so blown away and appreciative, and and everything you can do to help us maintain this level of interaction, please do it. By becoming a member, you make a big difference. It's not trivial. Currently our costs is way above our income, and we can maintain that for a little while, and then so let's all work together, let's all play together. And by becoming a member, you get to have all these other benefits that are wonderful, and then take the elective course as well if you're interested, or donate. It makes a huge difference. It matters. We're a small team. A lot of people think the Resonance Science Foundation is this huge team. We're a small team pedaling really hard to keep it going, and we really need your help at this point. So
yeah, great. Thanks for saying that. It's absolutely right, and it's one reason we made this program go out for free, so we could really get more people to be engaged and get aware of what is being offered here. And then those who choose to go in, and we'll, as we get down through the 6 weeks, we'll talk more about what comes following this.
Right.
But these kinds of Q&A with Nassim and myself and other faculty are really what comes with that membership in the program. And as you can see, it's really a rich time to spend together. And the questions we get are certainly, like you said, whoa, that's a tough one. We got quite a good audience here participating with us. So thank you, Nassim, for today. And thank you, everybody who came on today. Thank you also to Penny and Angelina and Jamie and the David. These are the core team that's really holding this together right now, and Teresa, who's been guiding this for so long and helping to help us in this transition to this new phase we're in right now. So
exactly.
Yeah. So
team of dedicated people, from Teresa, William Brown, everybody, Angel in Hawaii, that made this course, that flipped the website around from scratch in like less than 5 days. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, we're so grateful.
And amazing participants. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming today. We're going to do it again next week and for the next 5 weeks. And so we'll see you then. In the meantime, take really good care. Be safe.
Until next time, may the vacuum be with you.
Great. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.